Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. I am Elizabeth Corey. I'm the founder of Beating Trauma Doc. I'm here today, noon Eastern on Tuesday, to talk to you about trauma and the impact on our lives and what we can do about it. That's probably the most important part of this whole thing, because I think I don't need to tell you the impact of trauma on your lives. But what we do need to talk about is how can we make this better? What can we do about it? What are some practical steps we can take to have a better life, really? So today I want to specifically focus on something I actually hear a lot from my clients, and it is what this healing journey actually requires of us that nobody shows us how to do or what it even really looks like. I hear this from a lot of people, and so I think it's really important for us to discuss what it is that we are trying to get to as human beings on this earth, and how we can embody those things. And specifically, I was thinking about a few different characteristics in particular. There are probably far more than what I have listed here, but this is a good place for us to start, I think. So I'm going to talk about those first. And as I'm talking, feel free to ask any questions, make comments about your own journey, talk about how much this is all frustrating you too, because believe me, I have been battling it out with what he showed us when we were in our childhoods, right? And I probably hear this most from parents because they're like, how am I supposed to exhibit things that I never saw, right? And so a few characteristics I really wanted to talk about specifically today are faith and trust, and we can kind of group them together. I'm not talking about the kind of faith that's associated with religion necessarily, okay? I'm just talking about faith in the world around us, the universe, whatever you believe in, that things are going to be okay, right? That's a big ask for survivors of trauma. Huge. Trust can be both self-trust. It can be trust of others, right? As a matter of fact, almost every single one of these things is both something we need to practice on the inside, but also mirror out into the world. And usually as we do that more on the inside, it almost somewhat naturally mirrors out into the world. But don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of work we have to do on that front. The next one is patience, right? Patience is huge for us. And I'm going to get into a lot of the reasons why these things are not available to us right now and were not something that we could naturally exhibit as children. But patience is a big one here that we've probably lost sight of as a part of our complex trauma environment and our attempts to heal that in our adult lives. And then lastly, but definitely not least, right, is love and compassion. I group them together. You could get into these very specific definitions of how the two are different, but I do think that they kind of build upon each other, fuel each other. They have a lot of very similar characteristics. And if you can allow one, a lot of times you're also able to allow the other within reason. Okay. I mean, this is not, I want to be really clear. This is not where we're just going to flip a switch and suddenly we're going to have access to it. That's not how this works. It's about a gradual progression to embodying and exhibiting these signs more and more in our lives, right? We're not, I wish we could just flip a switch. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of mainstream stuff out there that tells us we can. I'm here to tell you, I don't buy that. But over time, we get more and more embodied in these particular characteristics. And yes, sometimes it can feel like there's this shift in us that almost happens overnight. But generally, we've been working up to that for quite some time. It's not so much that we just flipped a switch and there it was. I don't buy into that belief system, although it is out there and quite common, in fact. So let's talk about these particular traits, characteristics, signs, however you want to phrase it. I'm not real specific about what language we use there. But for me, like I said a minute ago, I am constantly personally struggling to bring these things more into my life, more into who I am, to characterize these things, especially to exhibit these things for others in particular, especially as a part of my coaching and with my clients. But what I have heard over and over again is nobody ever showed me this. I don't even know what it looks like. I don't know how it is I'm supposed to suddenly have these traits or exhibit these traits or be able to do this. It's almost ridiculous to ask me to do this when I just don't have any experience, or it hasn't shown up for me. It's never been exhibited in my life. And by that, I'm talking about other people doing this for you. And I hear this a lot, especially from parents. Parents are like, I want to show my kids these things. I want to be a better parent. I want to break this cycle, and I don't know what I'm doing. Right? That is generally the sense. And I totally get it. I've been in that same place myself. It seems correct, right? It's like, well, if you haven't been shown something, how in the world can you possibly show that to the world? Like, how can you embody that when it's never been shown to you? But there's a slightly different perspective I want to give you today about this, because that idea is actually wrong. It makes sense in a lot of ways with other things. For example, you're not going to know how to do math until somebody shows you or teaches you math, right? Because math is happening here, right? You're not going to know the history of the world unless you read the books, right? And somebody had to write the books so that you could know the information up here. The difference is that these things we're talking about here are not things that you hold up here. Now, we may go through times in our lives where we try to exhibit them in almost like a masky way to kind of get by, and that's okay. Like, if that's all we've got at the time, we should do that. That may be coming from up here, right? Like, it's like, okay, I am evaluating what it looks like to give someone compassion, and then I'm going to generally do what I think that is, right? Like that may be happening up here, but that's not your most grounded and embodied compassion that you were born with, right? And a lot of people will argue with me about this. There is no way I was born with this. I've never seen it. I've never felt it. I've never heard of it. It's not there. But that's probably your defenses talking, because underneath the surface, we have this aspect of self, which is really self, which I refer to as the grounded adult self. There can be a million names for this, but the grounded adult self is how I refer to it, and whatever you refer to it as is totally cool. Like, it doesn't really matter, but it's who you are on the most deep and grounded level. That is who you were born as. Now, don't get me wrong, you weren't born as an adult, right? So there was a self that was there already, and that self had all of these particular characteristics and skills that I'm talking about today. Faith, trust, love, compassion, patience, right? Those things existed there. Okay, as a baby and you're hungry, you're not going to be very patient. But the idea was that you inherently and innately had certain capacities available to you from the time that you were born. Okay, this is so important for us to understand. The problem is that when people say, I've never seen it, so I can't do it, we're operating from our defenders, and our defenders operate up here. And the only way that the mind does things is to copy things that have been done before. Okay, the mind is not really where our most creative selves come from. Okay, the mind is not what builds new things, okay? That's happening as we embody ourselves more. That's when we touch on that intuition, on that creativity, which, by the way, are other characteristics we could be talking about here today. They also apply very much to what we're talking about. So when we're in the mind, we're copying. When we're in the body, we're creating. Right? And so we have to get into the body, right? Now you're going, gosh, not this. But that's what I want to talk a little bit about for the second part of this session today, is how we go about doing that and what are some steps we can take to really connect, right, with those characteristics and traits that we ultimately want to have and are very much a big part of facilitating our healing journey. We actually need them for healing, which is at the same time also frustrating, because we need to heal to get them, and we need them for healing. So there's a bit of a cycle here that we're going through to embody them more, and then we do some more healing, and then we embody them more, and then we do some more healing. There is no straight line in recovery, and I know you already know that, but I feel it's important to mention that here, like I said about the light switch. You're not just going to flip this on. This is going to be a gradual process, and that's frustrating, to say the least. Jan is saying, I have found that when my defenses are in full force and triggered, getting angry, for example, helps me to develop the awareness for self-love and trust. A lot of it is boundary crossing that was never honored in childhood. And you bring up a really important point, because one of the things I'm going to talk about here is how we get back to these things. And it very often involves allowing ourselves to connect with the opposite of that, right? Which is sort of what you're talking about here. Letting yourself connect with your anger gets you more into the body from a standpoint of self-love, self-compassion, self-trust. The more we express our anger, the more we know what we want, right? So that's essentially what we get. But it seems to a lot of people to be counterintuitive, this process, because most of the sort of spiritually stuff that's out there will tell you focus on the positive, right? And I know I talk a lot about sort of toxic positivity and how it can in fact shut down our trauma responses and our traumatic emotions, and that's really dangerous. But that's sort of what's been accepted in the mainstream, even by people who have been doing psychology for a long time and are quite well known and well respected in the psychological community, can kind of focus or try to get you to focus a little too much, in my opinion, on positivity. And that's not what I focus on. So if this is your first time listening to me, get ready, because we're going to go down a road that may be a little unusual for you, actually. So I want to say hi to Katie too. Thank you for being here. So what do I mean here? Yes. So these things that we were supposed to, that we did embody at birth, were all things that were used against us by our abusers. So what we learned, right, what we developed were survival skills that put these things away because they were deemed unsafe by our defenders. And defenders are a group of parts specifically geared towards keeping us safe at all costs, but their approach to safety is often not what's best for us in our adult lives. They did a good job in childhood, but at this point, it's causing us some issues. So our need to force and control our way through life ensured that those grounded attributes kind of stayed hidden underneath the surface, away. And so we likely used our mind for most things, and we pulled ourselves out of the body. Dissociated, basically, is what is now being used to describe that, which thank goodness it is, because that's correct. We dissociated. We pulled ourselves out of the body. We went into the mind and we said, I'm going to operate from right here, because all that stuff that's embodied by my grounded adult self, faith, trust, patience, compassion, self-love, all of it is dangerous. That's what we learned a lot of times in childhood and interacting with abusive people. Okay. So how do we get back to them? So our goal is to reconnect to the grounded adult self, which lives in the body, like I was talking about. We want to get into the present moment. We want to get into the body, okay? Now, that's not easy to do, right? At all. That's really, really difficult, because when we are ruled by fear, we are ruled by the mind, and we are definitely not in the adult self, right? So we need to ground, and I have a lot of live streams on grounding. I recommend that you take a look at those. I've got one that's about, I think it's the 3 myths of grounding. Definitely watch that if you haven't already seen it. It's been there a little while, but if you go to the videos on my Facebook page and you search for grounding, you're going to find it. We cannot have enough reminders of how to ground, because the truth is, little bits of grounding are often even more effective than doing like longer, like hour-long, 2-hour-long things to ground us, because we are rewiring our system. We're rewiring the way we live in our body, and doing that really like often and repetitively is actually very effective. Also, it's extremely hard for us to ground for long periods of time, because we have a lot of stuff in the body, traumatic emotions, traumatic memories, stuff is going on in there, and we need to go easy on ourselves. So doing little bits of grounding at a time, I find to be very effective and less likely to put us in a state that feels super re-traumatizing. So 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, do these little bits of grounding. Personally, my favorite way to ground is to focus on my breath and my feet simultaneously. There's something about that that just draws me into my feet. It almost feels a little bit like I'm breathing into my feet. And I know I'm not breathing into my feet, but it kind of feels like that. It's like there's lungs in my feet. And that really grounds me. And as a person with a lot of trauma, I can oftentimes only hold that focus there for a few minutes at a time. And then my controller pulls me into the mind and starts spinning me about whatever the rabbit hole they want me to go down. There's always something because, the news always provides some tool for our controller to send us into some kind of spin. So we want to do it often. Do it 5 minutes every hour, 5 minutes every time you think about it. Set some alarms on your phone. The key is keep bringing yourself back to the body and out of the mind every chance you can. It's going to make a difference, but I will tell you what, your defenders are going to tell you that it is not going to make a difference. So while you're doing it, you're going to be hearing in your mind that it isn't working. Don't believe it. It's not the truth. But what I'm going to talk about next, which is writing, that can be a great way to kind of work with that when we hear it, because sometimes just dismissing it, actually most of the time, dismissing it is not going to be enough to make that message go away. We do need to hear it out, because it is in hearing it out that we can actually release it from the system. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be repetitive. It's going to take time. But the more you write from that message of, this is pointless, it's not working, it's never going to work, we don't need to be in the body, we just need to think, we just need to focus on now, all of those messages that I'm talking about. Every time we write from that, we are tremendously benefiting our system. And that can be, that grounding will help us to kind of get out of the mind spinning. But then the writing from that resistance from our defenders is also going to be a big factor in helping us calm down the mind in particular. So let's see. Yeah, Rebecca is asking, is that why we sometimes overthink things? Absolutely. I am the queen of overthinking. And actually my clients, as I've worked with them, they've kind of learned that as soon as they start going down that rabbit hole, as soon as there's like some kind of program or news thing, and there's always a news thing. There's always a news thing if we look hard enough. There's always something, and we just focus on that. Or we have like something going on in our life that has our fear up, and we just sit there and think about it, especially at night when we're supposed to be sleeping, right? And of things are attempts to pull us out of the body and keep us in the mind. And they get particularly active when we are having some success at getting into the body and feeling what's there. Those are when our defenders, especially the controller, is going to feel the most threatened. So they're going to come at us really strongly with spinning, as I call it, which is taking a topic and just spinning it to death, right? That's what they do with it all day, all night. It's very compelling. They'll make it seem like their case for why we need to think about it is usually very strong. They don't come at us with something that isn't going to be believable, because then we won't fall for it. So we're going to be spinning about topics that are hard not to spin about. Okay. So I'll put it that way. Things like finances, things like, really scary things going on in the world, things that happen in the news that then remind us of our trauma. There's always at least one of those things going on at all times. So yeah, that's the rabbit hole, right? That's what I call it. Or the spinning. Either one works. Watch for how your mind is just going on a particular topic, and then pull yourself into the body. That's one of the best things you can do. So let's talk about what some things you can write from in some of these situations to help you kind of bring yourself back to these traits that live in the grounded adult self. So if we want to be more compassionate, right, we need to write from our judgment. Now, again, what we're doing here is to draw out those adult traits and characteristics and skills. We have to process the traumatic survival skills that are there to kind of block it and hide it, because that particular grounded adult self trait is not acceptable, or it was not acceptable in childhood. So it's still not acceptable to our defenders. So if we want to be more compassionate, we need to write from our judgment. And that's hard because it doesn't sound very good. It's not going to be very nice. And we don't really want to accept that about ourselves, but that's okay. We're all judging, all of us, because every person here has a controller. Every person in the world has a controller, and controllers judge. They judge self, and therefore they project that out onto others, and they judge others. That doesn't mean we're necessarily always aware of it. That's what we're trying to build here. But if you want to be more compassionate, write from your controller's judgment, judging other people, that is going to make a huge difference in your ability to connect with your compassion. The controller is not their thing. Sorry, it looks like I disconnected for a second. So hoping you guys are still here. But we have to understand that the judgment that we have is a survival skill. It's meant to keep us going. Judgment of self, judgment of others. That keeps us, we need to always know where we are on the sort of totem pole of life, so to speak. The next one is, if we want to love ourselves, we need to write from our self-hate. That's hard. That's going to be a karma kid. And that part is really is the one that comes at us with all of that nasty stuff. And ironically, yes, they will come at us when we've done something wrong, but they will also come at us when we're considering doing something exciting or new or adventurous or whatever it is. This is how the karma kid keeps us small and keeps us invisible. So if we want more self-love, which, by the way, also leads to more love of others as well, we need to write from that self-hate. As long as we dislike ourselves, we're going to struggle to find those loving relationships in our lives, or just to have them with the people that are in our lives, for example, our children. If we want to trust, we need to be writing from our fear. I can't stress that enough. It is so important that we are writing from our fear, but I'll be honest, fear is a little tricky because the controller will hide the fear behind things like logic. So you're thinking, well, that just makes sense. That's just a rule to live by. But oftentimes there's a lot of fear behind that logic. Our controllers can even sound quite condescending in the way that they approach life. And that, again, is actually fear-based. So when we can start to see the fear underneath the other aspects of our defenses, it makes a huge difference, so that we can write from it and we can find some trust on the other side of that. And if we want to be patient, we need to write from our desperation, okay? Desperation, if you ever feel desperate, which I'm sure you're familiar with that feeling. I've had it plenty of times myself. You are in a part. There's an inner part that's present, okay? So it's very, very important that if you're feeling desperation, you write from it. Whatever it is that the desperation wants you to do, the best thing you can do is not do it. Now, it doesn't mean not do it forever, but it means not do it for now. Not do it while the desperation is present. Because oftentimes when we can get grounded, what it is we wanted to do may look a little bit different. It may look a little more balanced. There may be subtleties to it. Maybe the steps are a little smaller. Usually when we write from our desperation, the thing we were desperate to do begins to shift a bit, and it becomes something that's a little bit better for us in the long run. Again, doesn't mean the whole idea is bad. It just, typically, if we have desperation, it means that there's a part who's trying to get this thing done despite the opposition of other parts. So we want to write from the desperation, and then if we hear it, we can even write from parts in our system that don't agree with that desperate push that's happening in the system. So these are some ways that you can write to help release some of those survival skills and bring you back to that adult self characteristic that you most want to exhibit. And as you do that, that's going to make you capable of then exhibiting those characteristics more in your life, both toward yourself, which then, guess what, also helps with healing more, also towards others, which makes our lives a lot better. It doesn't mean that every person that's currently in our life is going to be able to then exhibit those kind of traits back to us. For sure, that's not going to happen. But knowing that will help us in making a lot of the decisions we need to make, especially around discerning in our relationships what's working, what's not, who's working, who's not. These are important things we need to learn. Right? So I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you to Amy and Carol and Jan for your comments here. I hope this was helpful. I've been really thinking about this one today, especially as apparently the universe is really requiring some significant patience from me right now. And I'm like, no, I want it now. I'm done. So I thought, hey, why not bring you something today that I can very much relate to? As that's actually true with most of my live streams. So thank you all so much. And I look forward to talking to you next Tuesday. And just so you know, if you're looking for someone to work with, just to take your life to that next level and work on a deeper level with your trauma, please contact me. Send me an email. I'm at Elizabeth with an S at beatingtrauma.com. And I would love to hear from you if you're interested in some coaching in the short term or the long term. I can help you out with that and to move you a little bit more out of that lovely controller and into the body so you can have a more peaceful life, which I think is what we all really want, right? In the end. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.